In September 2012, Dr. Laura Keith and I received a major grant from the Humanities Council South Carolina titled Promoting South Carolina African American Composers' Classical Music. The purpose of the project was to increase South Carolinians' awareness of historical, political, cultural, and social influences and impacts related to South Carolina African American classical composers and their music. The goal of the grant activity was to document and examine the critical contribution of African American composers from and in South Carolina to the genre of classical music through interactive lecture recitals among South Carolina audiences. Therefore, Dr. Laura Keith and I decided to present lecture recital series in public beginning January 2013, and we have been promoting South Carolina African American composers' classical music and presenting a series of lecture recitals around the state. We believe that these lecture recital series will enhance knowledge of classical music composed by African Americans and provide opportunities for integration among musicians, scholars, and the community. So, our first lecture recital took place at Bob Jones University in Greenville, South Carolina on January 24th. We featured compositions by Dr. Trevor Weston, Associate Professor of Music at Drew University in New Jersey. He's a former professor of music at the College of Charleston from 2000 to 2009. Second lecture recital took place at Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina on February 28th. At that time, we featured compositions by Dr. John Lane, formerly employed at Allen University in Columbia, South Carolina. Our third lecture recital took place at Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina on April 18th. We featured compositions by Dr. Cedric Adderley, a native of Columbia, South Carolina. He was previously employed at Claflin University as a vice president of academic affairs. He currently serves as dean of the college, Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. The fourth lecture recital took place at the South Carolina Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities in Greenville, South Carolina on August 22nd. We featured compositions by all three composers, Dr. Trevor Weston, Dr. John Lane, and Dr. Cedric Adderley. Then our fifth lecture recital took place yesterday at Christ Episcopal Church in Lancaster, South Carolina. We also feature all three composers. Now, we are going to present our sixth lecture recital tonight. From now on, Dr. Laura Keith will give more detailed information about all three composers and their music, along with their lives and musical backgrounds. I hope you enjoy her lecture and our performances. Before leaving, please complete our survey form for this lecture recital and give it to ushers as you exit this auditorium. Thank you.
Before we get into the music of the composers, I would like to give you a little bit of background of some of the African American composers and how we got to the point of where we are today to have some contemporary African American composers, and especially some from the state of South Carolina. Among the entire first generation of post-slavery black composers, and these are persons who were born after 1863, most of these persons are regarded as nationalists because they consciously turn to the music of their people as a source of inspiration for their compositions. Most of those who achieved distinction and some who did not achieve as well were excellently trained. They had studied at Oberlin, the New England Conservatory, and the National Conservatory of Music in New York City. Or they had studied privately with European-trained white musicians. Consequently, they knew how to write music in the traditional European style, and indeed often did so, because they wanted the music to sell. but they reserved much of their creative energy for Negro-inspired compositions. The composers who won recognition in the field of concert music generally began publishing late in life after first pursuing their careers in music or teaching at a college. Harry T. Burleigh was the first to achieve national distinction as a composer, arranger, and a concert artist. Best known are his piece entitled Six Plantation Melodies for Violin and Piano, composed in 1901. From the Southland for Piano was composed in 1914. Southland Sketches was composed for violin and piano in 1916, and a song cycle entitled Five Songs, composed in 1919. A younger generation of composers born in the 1880s included several who were both concert artists and college teachers. Clarence Cameron White studied at Oberlin Conservatory of Music. His goal was to become a concert violinist. His output included violin compositions and the spiritual arrangements, 14 Negro spirituals composed in 1927, and traditional Negro spirituals composed in 1940. Robert Nathaniel Dett, born in 1882, died in 1943, graduated with a Bachelor of Music degree in composition. After graduation, he taught at several colleges, including Hampton Institute, that we now know is Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. He was the director of music from 1913 to 1935. He studied composition at Harvard University and in Paris with Nadia Boulanger. Dett was one of the first Americans to utilize black folk tunes for classic development. His early piano suites and choral works were written for practical use, such as Magnolia. It was composed in 1912. In the Bottom was composed in 1913 with a popular movement called Dance Juba. Enchantment was a piece composed in 1922, The Cinnamon Grove composed in 1928, and the choral music In the Mind in 1916, and an oratorio composed in 1921 entitled The Chariot Jubilee. The concert music of these early composers was surprisingly successful when you consider how recently the black composers had emerged upon the American scene. Music historians generally use the term eclectic in reference to composers who draws upon several sources and different styles for his compositional materials and techniques. In contrast to the composers that I just discussed earlier, who took their music, though not all of it, from materials from black folk idioms, the eclectic composer felt free to choose whatever materials and techniques they believed suitable for the composition at hand. It may include black material, either folk or jazz, seria or aleatoria techniques, or be multifarious in nature. One of those composers was William Grant Still. In the broad sense, he was an eclectic, for his music included many styles and types, although it did emphasize folklorism and the traditional. In a narrower sense, however, the young composers who emerged during the mid-century years were more eclectic. They refused to be tied down by racial consciousness and drew freely upon widely divergent styles and sources. In their writing, some wrote conservatively in the classic forms, others experimented with free forms and exotic materials. The one quality they shared in common was that each believed it was important to chart his own course. Most of these composers, though not all, grew up in black communities and came to know intimately the music of their people, which was now broadened to include orchestral and piano, jazz, along with traditional spirituals and other folk songs, a little bit of gospel songs, and the ubiquitous blues. Composers after World War II. In the 1950s, works of other composers was attracting attention. Among them was Thomas Jefferson Anderson, better known as T.J. Anderson, Coleridge Taylor Perkinson, Julia Perry, Hale Smith, and Frederick Tillis. T.J. Anderson was educated at West Virginia State College, where he received a bachelor's in music. Pennsylvania State University, he received his master's in music education. And at the University of Iowa, he received his PhD. He taught in African American public schools and colleges in the South before he was appointed as professor of music at Tufts University in Massachusetts in 1972. He began publishing his music in 1959 and composed slowly but steadily thereafter. His mature style was distinctive for his use of melodic fragments and ever-shifting melodic and rhythmic patterns and intense instrumental coloring. His works include Squares, composed in 1965, Transitions was composed in 1971 for orchestra. He also orchestrated Scott Joplin's score of Treemonisha for the world premiere of the opera in Atlanta, Georgia in 1972. With few exceptions, the composers whose music was being performed in the mid-century years were university professors, some at some of the most prestigious colleges in the nation. Howard Swanson, born in 1907 and died in 1978, he was an exception. He obtained his early musical training in Cleveland, attended the Cleveland Institute of Music, where he received a bachelor in music. Then he won a Rosenwald Fellowship that enabled him to study with Nadia Boulanger in Paris in 1938. He remained in Europe until 1941, when the onset of World War II forced him to return home. In 1952, he received a Guggenheim Fellowship, and he returned to Europe to study and travel. This time, he remained in Europe until 1966. After World War II, the social status of the African American in the United States gradually improved, and that of the Black composer as well, but only to a certain extent. By the 1970s, composers born in the North no longer had to come south in search of a college teaching position or other music occupations, as musicians had done earlier. Beginning in the 1950s, the federal government became the most supportive patron of all musicians, whether you were black or white. The government established in 1965 the National Endowment for the Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts, which gave fellowships over the years to many musicians, regardless of race. The U.S. State Department sent musicians on worldwide tours, and such organizations as the U.S. Information Services sponsored concerts for them in Europe, Africa, and other parts of the world. The position of the black composer in the total picture of American music remained relatively the same as it had in previous periods of music history. 2 or 3 composers of concert music in each generation achieved national distinction. At the same time, a number of black composers who were not as well known were active, producing works of merit, and contributing to the total creativity of the musical world. During the 1970s, composers tended to fuse European styles and elements of black music, or the spirit of black music, to produce their own personal modes of expression. There was little interest in the neo-romantic style of folk tunes, as earlier composers had done. Orley Wilson pointed out, "I have always thought of composing in terms of abstract expressions of musical ideas, never in terms of imagery. I was somewhat turned off by much of the 19th century composing." As in the mid-century years, most African-American professional musicians in the classical sphere were associated with academic institutions, which permitted them to combine teaching with their professional activities, concertizing, and composing. The ranks of black classical composers had always been small. However, during the last 2 decades of the 20th century, several of the preeminent ones died, among them William Grant Still, William Levi Dawson, Howard Swanson, Undine Smith Moore, and Ulysses Kay. The period saw retirements, though most retirees didn't really retire. They just went home and continued to compose and doing their musical activities. Though publishing less than they had in earlier times, the concert composer produced a wider variety of music in the last decades of the 20th century than previously, primarily because of commissions they received to write pieces for recitalists and performance groups and to compose music for special occasions and special projects. Generally, the composers wrote music on commission or wrote for the college or the community groups that they directed. The commission came from diverse sources in addition to the conventional ones, such as symphony orchestras and chamber groups, opera and ballet companies, educational and community institutions, and individual artists. The three African-American composers of classical music from South Carolina are composers of the contemporary arena, composers of the 21st century who drew upon various styles: European, African-American folk songs, jazz, blues, perhaps a little gospel, aleatory, and traditional classical music, and followed his own path to create music masterpieces. Tonight, you will hear music from these three composers: Dr. Trevor Weston, Dr. John Lane, and Dr. Cedric Adderley. Trevor Weston presently serves as Associate Professor of Music at Drew University in Madison, New Jersey. Prior to his appointment from 2003 to 2009, Weston serves as Music Director and organist at St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. From 2000 to 2009, he served as a Professor of Music at the College of Charleston. It was in South Carolina at the College of Charleston where Weston became interested in poetry by Charleston women. He received his PhD from the University of California at Berkeley, studied with Richard Feliciano. He received his Master of Arts from the University of California in Berkeley and studied with Andrew Embry and Orley Wilson, his primary teacher. Weston had a double major in music and history at Tufts University. Composition became his primary focus while studying with T.J. Anderson. The opportunity to study with Orley Wilson and T.J. Anderson, who were two of our later 20th century composers of classical music, had a profound influence on his compositional style. From 2001 to the present, Weston has received numerous commissions to compose compositions for various organizations, choral groups, and schools. His compositions have been performed in Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center, Piccolo Festival in South Carolina, Taylor Music Festival in Arizona and South Carolina, in the Netherlands, France, Canada, and Hungary. Tonight, you will hear a composition entitled The Knell. This piece was composed to accompany a silent film created in memory of the events of 9/11 at an exhibit at Savannah School of the Arts and Design in 2002. The film for the exhibit was created by Lauren Sheward, a colleague from the College of Charleston. Her film showed individual pieces of paper falling in slow motion, a common scene from 9/11. Trevor was told that the film would work on a loop, so he composed the knell as a palindrome, so that the music could also seamlessly work in a loop. He imagined the music to represent a myriad of cries, bell strokes signifying danger or despair in the distance. The falling intervals, mostly thirds, represent the fallen pieces of paper. Measures 17 through 19 are the central measures of the piece and reflect the despair and anguish in more obvious ways. And now, the knell, performed on piano by Dr. Choi. Our next piece, composed by Dr. Trevor Weston, is entitled New Blues for TJ. Trevor studied with T.J. Anderson. He is the reason that he started his journey as a composer. T.J. Anderson's children organized a surprise 75th birthday celebration for him and asked all of his former students to submit original compositions, papers, etc. in his honor. Trevor wanted to write a piece that honored T.J.'s dedication to the documentation of the African American musical tradition through concert music, so he decided to write a blues. The piece is essentially in 12 bars with a coda blues tag referencing a blues lick that goes back to the earliest recordings of the blues in the 1920s. TJ's musical language is direct, precise, and clear, so he wanted to approach this piece in the same way. The 12-bar blues is organized into three measure phrases, 1 and 4, 1 through 8, and 9 through 12. Call and response often occurs between 2-bar phrases. For instance, measures 3 and 4 respond to measures 1 and 2. Measure 9 is always the climax in the blues. Usually, this measure introduces the dominant chord before returning back to the tonic or the original key area in measures 11, R, and 12. This piece returns to the opening music theme in measure 11. And our next composer's music we will feature will be Dr. John Lane. Presently, Dr. Lane is president of Fidelity Enterprise in Columbia, South Carolina, and where he's a chief executive officer. Before that employment, he was at Allen University in Columbia, where he served as associate vice president of academic affairs and also professor of music. He received his Doctor of Music Education and Composition from the School of Music at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. He received his Master of Divinity in Scripture and Interpretation from the Divinity School at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He received his Bachelor of Music in Music Education from the University of South Carolina. From 2006 and 2012, of course, he was the Vice President of Academic Affairs. Prior to coming to Allen University in Columbia, Dr. Lane was working at Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois from 2000 to 2005, where he worked in the Conservatory of Music and the Department of Biblical Studies. He's had many compositions written on commission. Just name a few, View the Midnight Skies, Sounds of Home, Favorite Times, and the one that we're going to feature tonight, Songs for Eleanor. Many of his pieces have been performed in South Carolina as well as other parts of the state. In 2011, his piece was performed at the Piccolo Spoleto Festival in Charleston. He also had a piece performed at the American Choral Directors Association National Conference in Chicago and the College Music Society in Greensboro, North Carolina. Songs for Eleanor. Lane incorporates several contemporary styles in his composition. Songs for Eleanor offers a blessing, Elliot's welcome to her family. This is a newborn baby into a family. In the 10 works in the Eleanor collection, the soprano sings on behalf of all family members, her mom, Carolyn, her father, Martin, and a brother named Eric. Songs for Eleanor in particular explores writing for multi-octave scales and the new sonorities and directions that result from strict adherence to registration. The vocalist sings in both French and English, sometimes within the same song, and employs standard vocal techniques, approximate speech, and sprechgesang, a style of speech inflecting singing akin to the more popular style called Sprechstimme, a style of speech that was used by Arnold Schoenberg and other characters. Other characters in the Eleanor collection represent each member of Ellie's new family. Her dad and Martin in the interludes, Big Brother, Eric in No Means Nothing, and the protagonist of the song for Eleanor. The nurturing mother sings to her new daughter in private of her love for her commitment to her and her stronger sense of self-identity, and because of her daughter. The benediction is an intimate at home with an adoring assurance and long, smiling gazes in the safety of cradled arms. And now we will have Dr. Lori Hicks from Claflin University. She will sing 4 selections. One is entitled Father Interlude. The second one is Keep You and Hold You, Over My Head, and End with Pursuits. Dr. Laura Hicks, accompanied by Dr. Choi on piano.
books I read. It's for your care, for this joy, thank you, and the happiness, thank you, daughter. All these prayers I pray, all these prayers I pray. It's for your welfare,
Cedric Adderley. Presently, Dr. Adderley is the Dean of the College and Professor of Music at Capriccio University in Columbus, Ohio. From 2007 to 2011, he's Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs at Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina. From 2005 to 2007, he was Assistant Vice President for Academic Affairs at Claflin. And from 2000 to 2005, he was Chair of the Department of Music and Associate Professor at Claflin University. He received his Doctor of Musical Arts in Composition from the University of South Carolina in 1997, his Master of Music in Composition from the University of South Carolina in 1992, and his Bachelor of Music in Music Education in 1987 from East Carolina University. His administrative training and leadership development, he went to Widener University in Chester, Pennsylvania during the year August 2008 until June 2009. He's been commissioned to do and write several compositions. One is entitled Hear the Roar from Widener University in Chester, Pennsylvania, 2010. He also wrote Suite for Two Pianos in Columbia, 2010. Sweetgrass Sketches for the Charleston County School of the Arts Wind Ensemble. Praise the Lord as an SATB choir piece for the University of Dayton Gospel Choir in Dayton, Ohio, and a Gaelic Journey for the Creighton Middle School Band in Columbia. And Joyful Noise was the SATB choir with brass and percussion. He has written several more pieces besides these. Tonight we're featuring Three Dreams. It's a song cycle set to the text of poetry by Langston Hughes. First one is entitled Dream. Second one is Dream Dust, where Dr. Adderley used two poems in the same composition. And the last one is Dreams. The composer, who is Dr. Adderley, he wrote these compositions with a slow and introspective. They reflect on the world and the process of dreaming as a healthy and a necessary part of one's existence. Now, Langston Hughes wrote his poems based on to express the value of dreaming, compares the death of a dream to life being a broken winged bird. And life is not worth living if there's no purpose to life. In Dream Dust, the composer, Dr. Adderley, combines the text of two poems. The reflections of the author's beautiful experiences allow a seamless transition from one poem to the other and back again. And now, a performance of Dreams, sung by Dr. Laura Hicks, accompanied by Dr. Choi.
Life becomes a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to all your dreams, for if you let them go, life becomes a barren field, frozen with snow. Gather out of stardust, just a little dream dust. Gather out of earth dust, gather up, gather up, gather out of stardust.
Our final selection for the evening, with a piece composed by Dr. Cedric Adderley, is entitled Capriccio and Pastoral. It is a piece that is through composed as a show piece where melodic passages were developed according to pre-assigned harmonic clusters. The entire piece is developed from the harmonies and expanded melodies found in the first measures, with contrasting materials also developed in the same manner. With equal importance placed on both instruments, the piano does not merely accompany the flute, it plays an integral role in the display of melodic and rhythmic inventiveness. And now, Capriccio and Pastoral, played on the flute by Mrs. Lisa Bartholow and accompanied by Dr. Choi on piano. composition by Dr. Cedric Adderley is entitled Adagio and Dance. This piece is a slow, mysterious first section, conveys a message of loneliness and yearning. It is contrasted with a bright and playful dance section with driving rhythmic ostinatos and energetic melodic passages. This piece was commissioned and dedicated to the 1996 Guilford County High School Honor Band in Greensboro, North Carolina. The slow, mysterious section that I just mentioned will be heard. And now we will hear Adagio and Dance performed by Claflin University's Wind Ensemble, directed by Dr. Patrick